As a member of the SLU community, how did you witness or experience the Arab Spring through social media?
Well, to be honest, don't really know a whole lot about the Arab Spring, and you know, what was going on over there. I mean, I know the general gist of it, but I think it's cool that like social media kept people so in the loop and like so aware of what was going on. You know, if you think about other springs that have happened like in history, like the Prague Spring or communist, like especially in Soviet Union, and like when their governments were laxing some of their like untightening some of their rules in like the 60s and stuff in the Eastern Bloc countries. You definitely didn't see like people tweeting about it and stuff like that, for example. So I think it's cool, like how informed people can be and how easily and stuff. So that's pretty cool.
So
personally, I don't know that much about the Arab Spring.
Was it your first time? Was it the first time for you where you were able to realize how different life is in a non-democratic country?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, you know, you see things. I see things on Facebook, see things on Twitter, kind of just online, like Yahoo, sites, just you know, general sites like that, and just kind of you read headlines, I guess, like. So yeah, it makes you think sometimes, like, or like seeing a picture on the front page of the New York Times, like every day, of like, you know, stuff going on over there. So yeah, definitely. I mean, it was probably the first time I really thought about life in like a non-democratic country, and like, especially because I'm sort of coming of age where I can understand like government and democracy and stuff like that. So yeah, interesting, different.
As a member of the SLU community, how did social media play a role in your own experience during the Arab Spring?
Social media has really educated me in a way that I really wouldn't have been exposed to this if it wasn't for social media, if that makes sense. Just because I don't take any classes that deal with, I don't know, Middle Eastern and I don't know, cultures. So through social media outlets, it allows me to learn more, I guess.
So it was social media played a huge role in educating you.
Yeah, it's a useful tool that just allows me to do research on my own and exposes me to like videos, pictures, and headlines that I wouldn't normally see every day if it wasn't available, I guess.
So if you didn't have, if social media didn't exist, it would be fair to say that a vast majority.
I wouldn't know anything about the Arab Spring.
Okay.
But you do have to be aware of where the information is coming from, because many people say if I was looking on Wikipedia, it's people can just post whatever they want, so you have to be conscious of where you're getting your information from.
Okay.
Hi, so we're gonna do this interview now, so you wanna just introduce yourself for the audience, please?
Sure. My name's Rolof Grunewald. I'm a senior here at St. Lawrence. I'm a physics major, and I'm doing this interview to apparently see how much I know about some matters in the government department. So.
Yeah, well, alright, let's just get started, I guess. So my first question to you would be, what is your basic understanding of what the Arab Spring consisted of?
The Arab Spring consisted?
Yeah.
In my experience, or what I know about it, is that the Arab Spring was a movement that happened in the Middle East, countries like Egypt and Tunisia, where people were protesting their governments. People felt that their governments were unfair about the way they did things, and there were a lot of protests going on about different matters in that. For instance, the Gaddafi regime was one in Syria, in Libya. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, where people were protesting the dictatorship that Gaddafi had, and that led to him being overthrown, and they got a new government. So there's definitely positive movement from the Arab Springs.
Okay, okay. And what do you think, talking about the Arab Spring still, how do you think social media and like online networks that connect people had an impact on it? Do you think they had any, or if they did, how did they, you know?
Well, I definitely think social media had a huge impact on it. Specifically, YouTube and Facebook, I would say, is the two biggest social media impacts on me. As being a college student, I don't really have time to watch news or read newspapers very much. And everything I know about the Arab Springs, I know from Facebook posts that I see, articles that some of my friends post on Facebook that I read from that, or videos that's on YouTube about protests going on. For instance, I have one friend who's in the Middle East now, who's working there with some people and some human rights movements, and I keep getting, like, seeing her Facebook updates, so I keep knowing, like, what's going on there. I keep being updated. And I mean, the way the world is just like shrunk due to social media.
Yeah,
It's definitely a sign that I learn more due to social media than I would have without it.
So you think this like helped them organize themselves or something like that? Would you think that would be the case?
Yeah, because a lot of people post like updates about how they support certain movements or how they're against certain like governments or certain setups about how things are.
Yeah.
So overall, I definitely feel like it gets the world a lot more involved than it would have been, where if social media weren't there, I would not have had any idea or any opinion about it. And
Right.
now I can help these people to actually make a difference.
All right, that sounds good, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hello, Professor. Would you mind just introducing yourself for the audience?
Yes, this is Alan Draper, Professor of Government, been here 30 years.
Okay, so we're just gonna have a couple questions about the Arab Spring. So would you mind telling us what is your basic understanding of what the Arab Spring consisted of?
Arab Spring is a series of revolts that overthrew the autocracies in most Arab countries. What was it, 2010, 11, somewhere around there?
Yeah.
Starting in, I think, Tunisia and spreading throughout most of the Arab world. And my knowledge is just as a informed citizen. It's not my field, so I can't claim any expertise.
All right, and so talking about the same topic, how do you think social media had an effect on this whole situation?
I think social media had an effect on the Arab Spring in ways very similar to other political events. I think social media quickens politics in the sense of knowledge and images go much faster. They're transmitted easily to broader numbers of people. And so it quickens the pace of politics. And you see that, I think, in the Arab Spring, in how quickly people in one country took what they saw happening elsewhere and tried to apply it, make it happen in their own country. It quickens the pace of politics. It potentially draws more people in, and you get more, I guess you could say, imitation political learning as people see what's happening elsewhere, and they try and copy it for themselves. So that's one aspect, I think, in which social media made a difference.
Right.
But the other thing is, social media also creates what we call weak ties, in that people who are contacted through social media, there's no responsibility to each other, because they don't know necessarily who they are. They just see the images. They don't know those people personally. And so social media, while it quickens and broadens politics, it also weakens the people, the connections between people who it brings together, because there's very little formal organization. Those people don't necessarily know each other that well. That's my own sense.
Yeah, well.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor.
Okay.
How much do you know about the Arab Spring?
I know that started in Egypt to overcome the dictatorship of Mubarak, and then spread across other countries. And it happened like in 2010, 2009,
What was the impact of social media in your mind?
I know that there were a lot of Facebook messages, and people were actually asking people to participate through the means of through Facebook. And also I know that, for example, the BBC was also open a whole sort of space where people can text and to see what happens in the report that will be there. So people have a really important role in informing the media what was going on, what was happening. So I think it was very important.
Do you think the Arab Spring would have happened without social media?
I think it would have happened anyways, because we cannot undermine the role that the people itself took in the matters in that time. And said that, however, like the media played a important role, but that was used by the people in a really strategically and really sort of clever way in this time. So I think it would have happened anyways, but maybe we wouldn't know as much as we know today, or if it wouldn't be for the internet and social media like blogs and Facebook and so on.
Okay. So, how much do you know about the Arab Spring?
I heard of Arab Spring as to me is happening last year in the northern Africa, that the young people basically come out and kind of push down the how you call it, like the absolute power, that kind of
Dictators, you mean?
dictators. Yep, that's what the word I was looking for. Yep, and then it started in Egypt, and then it spread in northern Africa.
Okay. What in your mind was the impact of social media on the Arab Revolution?
I think social media helps to spread the news to the whole world, that like what's actually happening in there. So I think that it helps like the revolution to spread faster around the Arab Africa.
Okay. And in your mind, could this revolution have happened without social media?
I think to a large extent it cannot, because I feel like lots of like what we know about it is pretty much just from like the social media, and then the people can react based on the information from the social media. So like it cannot like spread that fast, like the revolution without this, I think.
Okay. And what in your mind were the root causes of the revolution?
Wow, I think it's like the dictatorship in Egypt. Somehow, like the people like to the point that they need to come on and push back.
So, what in your mind were the root causes of the Arab Spring?
I think the root causes were social inequalities, lack of opportunity, and lack of like social mobility in different Arab nations. I know that it started when a fruit stand guy in Tunisia was asked to like move his fruit cart, and he was just so fed up with like the police interfering with his business that he lit himself on fire, and that eventually started a riot, I think, in Tunisia, and eventually that spread to other countries. So that's what I know about the causes.
How much do you know about the role of social media in the Arab Spring?
Facebook, Twitter, and stuff like that.
Yeah,
right?
Facebook, Twitter.
I know that in specific Arab nations, like such as Egypt, it played a pretty important role. A lot of youth, students, young professionals were using Facebook particularly as a vehicle for expressing not their rights, but their what they want. I mean, out of their government, how corrupt it kind of is and what they want to do about it. And so I think social media became a way for people to talk to the world about what was happening in their countries. And it also became a way for people to be informed. It's kind of like on Facebook when your friend likes something and you end up liking it, like, oh, it's kind of cool, I like it. So it kind of spreads, and people become informed about topics like that.
Do you think the Arab Spring protests and revolutions would be possible without social media?
I'm not so sure about that, but I know that social media played an important role, and if it wasn't there, it probably could have just been like another news, like another piece of news, like, oh, too bad that somebody lit himself on fire, it's bad and whatnot. But I think having social media there and having people like show their interest, it became something different. You know what I mean? It's not just another like sad thing that's happening in some other country. A lot of involvement was shown through this, and a lot of people became informed, I think, through social media. And so I don't know like if it could have happened without it, but I know that it definitely helped it out a lot.
How would you describe the specific role that social media played in the Arab Spring?
The role that social media played in the Arab Spring was as a facilitator. So it facilitated the organization of the population that was already mobilized. So the kind of conditions for rebellion already existed, and they probably existed for decades. But the opportunity to easily connect between individuals was facilitated by social media, in particular, obviously, Twitter and Facebook. So people could organize and mobilize on Facebook and Twitter and get the information, where do you need to be, at what time do you need to be, things that would be very difficult otherwise, because of the total monitoring of the government of people's private lives. And so because there's all this monitoring in an authoritative regime that, for example, let's take Egypt as an example, right? So in Egypt, the authoritarian regime was very effective in monitoring people's actions and activities. But social media allows you to do things outside of that monitoring. Now, granted, it's easy to monitor Twitter and Facebook, but when you have hundreds of thousands of people communicating in that way, it's very difficult to stop the tide. We're seeing the same thing come out of Syria right now. So, for example, in Syria, it's not that social media allowed for the rebellion to happen, or even for it to continue, but what it allows it to do is to continue the mobilization of internal public support and especially external public support, because in Syria there's a total media blackout. I mean, it's very difficult for journalists to get in, report easily. What we're getting is active reports of people on the ground. So individuals become journalists that are telling us what is going on. Anyone with a smartphone can film the atrocities on the ground and put it on YouTube, and we're all having access to that information. So it's a facilitator of connecting people through active participation, through the sharing of information. That's the key role, I think, that social media has presented. And it's really... Well, let me back up. I think it really started with what's called the Twitter revolution in Iran. So this is 2 years before the Arab Spring, right after the elections in Iran, 2009 elections. There were massive protests alleging corruption when Ahmadinejad was reelected. And it was largely done, again, the mobilization was largely done through Twitter. And that was the first time we tested Twitter's use in political movements, especially in nonviolent resistance.
How would you describe the specific role that social media played in the Arab Spring?
I guess I'd answer that by saying that it gave people over here in the West a larger sense of it. So it showed that there was a lot of group cohesion and unity behind these grievances that these people were fighting for. But I think at the same time, people overestimated the impact of social media in I remember reading something that said that 75% of the tweets in Iran were made by Westerners, but they were just using Farsi. So it was people using Farsi over here. They weren't on the ground actually doing anything. Now, it obviously worked as a tool to organize people and get them at rallies and stuff, but I think I kind of agree with the argument that social media itself isn't the catalyst of hard activism. It's not going to make people, get pepper sprayed by policemen or get shot by rubber bullets, but it might get them together to start, engaging in acts like that.
How would you describe the specific role that social media played in the Arab Spring?
I think that the main role that social media played within the Arab Spring was how it allowed individuals to connect with each other. And these connections might not have been made otherwise without the presence of social media. And I think this is an important notion because of where the events occurred. They occurred in the Middle East, and I think in this region of the world specifically, there are a lot of religious and cultural barriers that sort of separate individuals. So social media platforms such as Facebook and Twitter allowed individuals maybe from different cultures to connect and unite for a singular cause to sort of fight back or act against the governments that were suppressing them for so many years. And I think that is the main point, is that social media creates networks. It doesn't create hierarchical connections between individuals. Everybody sort of has the same amount of clout online. So, for example, maybe a terrorist organization is run sort of like a business from the top down. And because of that, they are able to operate very effectively. And so I do think social media played a very important role within the Arab Spring. But ultimately, because of these network connections, I think that it was the individuals that were actually protesting on the streets, risking their lives, bodily harm, that actually sparked the revolution. And as we saw, the Arab Spring was not solely concentrated in one country. I think that, moreover, the social media also allowed individuals to see, oh, this is what's occurring in this country. You can pick up a cell phone and film the protests in Tunisia, and somebody sees it in another country and sort of sparks the revolution there. So although I believe that social media did play a very important role in the Arab Spring, I think ultimately it was the individuals on the ground that sort of truly fueled the protests and the ultimate upsetting of these leaders or governmental regimes. And I think it'll be interesting to see in the future if there are additional protests or events similar to the Arab Spring that occur, if the role of social media will sort of change from a mobilizing factor to something more run like a hierarchical organization, and allow social media to be the true innovator of change.